David Donardo, flying question, if you insist. I want to get my pilot's license. As a 19-year-old, having the money for the lessons is a far stretch. I do, however, have enough money saved to practically obtain a glider pilot certificate, which is great. I'm just not sure if I should wait 5 or 10 years and put the money I've saved towards the private pilot's license, which is 6 times that amount, or use the money to get flying in gliders. Your thoughts? Thank you for the question, David. David, my entire political philosophy is I don't think I have the right to tell anybody. Sir, I can give advice, and you're about to get some. I certainly wouldn't mandate anything. I do not believe in mandating anything to anybody. But if I was in charge of flight training for the country, I would, in the strongest terms possible, say that everybody who ever gets a pilot's license should start in gliders, without question. Without question. I cannot tell you, well, of course I can. I'm about to tell you why this is so important. And I won't spend all night with this either, because I know this is a little limited too. Look, here's the thing, David. There's 2 or 3 major aspects to this. First of all, the least important and the most cool is if you find yourself, you might want to write this down, see if you can get a training in a Grob, G-R-O-B 103. It's a 2-seat glider. It's high performance. They're very common out there. If you get a Schweitzer 233 or something, it's a little more old school, a little clunkier. It's a lot more like a Cessna. See if you can find somebody who can train you in a Grob. That's a common glider trainer or something like that. Because the least important part to me was the reason I did it, and that is you will feel like you're in a fighter jet. It's front and back seating. It's tandem seating. You will sit in the front. There will not be a propeller in front of you. You'll close a canopy. You'll have a stick in the middle. You'll have a stick the way God intended, and you'll sit back and you'll have a 4-point harness, and you will think that this would be a very sedate and gentle and quiet kind of an event, and you'd be right about that. But if you ask this guy to ring it out on a demo flight, you will not believe the amount of energy and power and things that you can do in a glider that you would never, ever, ever try in a Cessna 172, not ever, ever. On my first flight, it was an aerobatic flight, and we did 3G wingovers, and then we went down on the deck and buzzed this construction crew. Well, we stayed 501 feet away from them. And pulled up in a 2.5, 3G climbing turn. I was sold. If that's the kind of flying you want, it's just plain cool. It is far more exciting and energetic than flying in a Cessna or a Piper, far more. You will start your flight training in 40-degree banks, trying to find a thermal. Fantastic. Also, parenthetically, I might add that when you start your very first glider flight, you will be formation flying. You'll be flying formation behind a tow plane, and seeing another airplane in the sky that close is a hell of a thrill. I never forgot it. The first experiences I had on my first glider ride was, holy cow, look how close we are to this airplane. You can see the elevators move and the ailerons move, and it's like, wow, incredible. Now let's get to the main points here. The 2 main points are this. First of all, if you get started in gliders, it will make you a far better, far better single-engine pilot than you would be otherwise. Especially if you go someplace remote where most glider ports are. Because if you go someplace remote, what you're going to find is you don't have to worry about all the radio nonsense. You don't have to worry about the engine nonsense. You don't have to worry about generally the electrical system nonsense. You don't have to worry about airspace or air traffic or any of that stuff. Most glider ports are far enough out there so that you can simply worry about flying. Imagine that. Just worry about flying. We didn't have radios in our gliders. I suspect that's probably changed since then, but we just didn't. We wagged the rudder when we're ready to go on the tow plane, and off we went. And so, aside from all the distractions being gone, here's the main thing. In general aviation, this took me a long time to understand when I was a kid. There are basically 4 forces acting on an airplane. There's gravity, which pulls the plane down. There's lift, which pushes the plane up. There's thrust, which moves the plane forward, and drag, which tries to slow it down. And when you're teaching people to fly in powered engines, powered airplanes like a Cessna again, basically the thing that most people don't understand is that the pitch of the airplane controls the airspeed, and the throttle controls your altitude. Most people think that's exactly wrong, and it makes sense that it's not intuitive. You would think that if you pick the nose of the airplane up, if you increase the pitch, the plane would climb, but it doesn't. If you pitch the nose of an airplane up, it'll climb a little bit, but mostly it'll slow down. If, on the other hand, if you push the throttle forward, you would think you'd go faster, but if you push the throttle forward, you actually start going up higher. So this idea that the pitch of the airplane, the angle of the nose controls the speed of the airplane is the single most important thing you'll ever learn in flying. It is the whole thing. Pitch controls airspeed, period. Now, if you have an engine, you've got all these variables in there. Do I put some power in? What does that do? Will I climb? No. When you don't have an engine, pitch controls airspeed because there is no power. There's just no power. You want to go faster? Put the nose down. You want to slow down? Pull the nose up. That alone will help you enormously when it comes time to get your power rating. And secondly, glider flying is so much seat of the pants flying, it is actually genuinely a way to learn how the airplane feels. If you're going to be doing thermal soaring in the summer or ridge soaring, let's just take thermal soaring for a minute. Nowadays, these kids today, they have these electronics that show you when you're rising, and it's got like a moving map thing, and it's blue when you're climbing and red when you're descending. We didn't have that stuff. A glider is very lightly loaded, which means that there's a lot of wing for the weight, a lot of surface area for the weight. And so when you're trying to find a thermal so you can go up, gliders, by the way, for those of you who've asked this before, gliders never go up through the air. Gliders can climb, but a glider never goes up through the air, never, unless you put some energy into it and pull up, but you're losing airspeed. Generally speaking, the reason a glider will climb is because it is descending through air that is rising faster than you're descending. Either ridge lift is pushing the air up pretty quick and you're going down through the ascending air and going up, or a thermal is coming up off the ground, and even though you're descending into airs that's moving up faster than you're coming down. The point about that is seat and rudder flying, stick and rudder flying, seat of your pants flying, you'll feel it. You'll be flying along, you feel a little bump. You'll look down, you'll see your variometer starting to show a little bit of increase. You turn left, and then you either got to the thermal or you went the wrong way. Now you start descending. Okay, well, it moves back over there somewhere. You start turning around doing that. So I guess those 3 points. The three main points I want to make are, so it's a great way to teach you how to fly. And once you get this done, and you'll get the basics of radio, and when it comes time to transition to power, you won't have to learn how to fly. You already know how to fly. You know how to fly better than your flight instructor, frankly, if you got started in gliders. And then things like the radio and the engine are relatively trivial. The second thing is that's very important is if you're in a glider, you have a situational awareness that you have to develop, because if you don't, you're going to get in trouble, that you never have in a powered airplane. And what I mean by that is, if you're in a glider and you're not directly over the field, and that's the plan, to get out there sometimes, you will always be thinking about what is the air doing and what is the wind doing. Am I in lift? Am I in sink? Where's the wind taking me? If you want to go away from the field, you want to go upwind so that the wind blows you home. Last thing you want to do is go downwind, turn around, and realize, hey, guess what? I am not going to be able to get back there. Just not. So your situational awareness is built into the glider training experience, and because of that, you will always be aware of what you're doing in a way that a power pilot never will. These people, I mean them no disrespect, almost all the pilots go this way, but when you have an engine out there, I'm going to fly across country. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go from here down to, I'm going to go from Van Nuys to, San Luis Obispo. Great. Off you go. You're not worried about the wind. You're not worried about the lift. You've got an engine and you're following a course. But the wind and the things are all having an effect, which leads me to the third and final point, and that is this, David. I've had 3 engine failures now. Most people go their entire lifetimes without ever having a hiccup on their engine. But for one reason or another, I've had three. And I've almost got 1,000 hours. I have 930 hours and an instrument rating. I've had 3 engine failures. And most of the people that suffer engine failures panic, and they try to continue to make the plane fly even though it doesn't have an engine anymore. They pull back on the stick or the yoke, and they slow down, and then the plane stalls, and in they go. That's generally what happens. A glider pilot, doesn't matter what airplane you're in, doesn't matter if you're in a Cessna, or if you're in anything. A glider pilot, when you have, when that gets quiet out there, you'll feel what I felt. You'll feel like, oh my God, you'll feel this moment of just, it's not panic, but it's not a happy feeling. And then suddenly you'll just say, all right, well, I'm a glider pilot. I've landed gliders 300 times. I'm in a glider now. Where can I go? When I was talking about the situational awareness, the one thing I kept missing really was you're in a glider. As you go from point A to point B, you're always looking down. Where can I land now? I can get to that road. I can get to that field. I've got. Is there anything behind me? There's an airport. I can get here. You're doing this all the time because the chances are that sometime you could just run out of lift, and where are you going to go? So if you start with a glider and then transition into powered flight, that will stay with you. Where am I going to go? Every time I fly my Long Easy or when I flew the Sky Arrow, every single time, I got that field. Okay, I got that road. Now, next up here's here. It's just built into it. You don't think twice about it. So that's invaluable. And when things go south, and they probably won't, but when they do, or if they do, you'll be ready in a way that no one else can. You will be ready. You'll be fine. It'll be a non-event. You'll land on a field. You'll land on a road. You'll get out of your airplane with your passengers. You'll call the insurance agency, and you'll go home, and you'll have a great story to tell. You won't panic. You won't try to make a plane fly further than it can. Little things in gliders that we learn are, if you really are way away from where you need to be, if you're short of where you need to be, dive. Most people try to hang on. They slow down to minimum flight, minimum controllable airspeed, minimum sink, so they're going as slow as they can. But if you're heading into a wind or you need to get someplace, you want speed. So dive, get all the speed you can, then level off. And now instead of being level at 60 knots, you're level at 120 knots. Little things like this, they'll all be second nature. And I think finally, when we were practicing in gliders, engine failures are like I say, they just generally don't happen. They happen to me, but that's because I'm in show business and I like good stories to tell. I guess that's the explanation. But they never happen. But when you get an aero tow, what does happen considerably more frequently than the tow plane losing power, which again never happens, is that a rope can break. I mean, these ropes are used hundreds of times a day, and they get sometimes hundreds of times a day, certainly hundreds of times a week. They can get a little frayed, and sometimes the rope will break. The rope, they don't use a steel cable because sometimes if you can't release and he can't release, you need to break the rope on purpose, and they'll teach you how to do that. But rope breaks are not unheard of. And so in glider training, we would start off behind the tow plane, and we would start to climb. And from my first lesson, and I've never forgotten it, I do the same thing every single time I've taken off. I've taken off thousands of times. Because of my glider training and because the rope break is fairly common, my instructor in the back, who I can't see, would say, I want you to tell me what you're going to do during this entire takeoff roll. I just want you to just say it out loud. Okay, here we go. We're on the roll. If it breaks now, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop. All right, we're flying. The tow plane isn't flying yet, and we're still going to stop inside the field. We start climbing out. I can still get down inside the boundary, still inside the boundary. Okay, we're too high to make the landing inside the airport boundary, going over that fence into that field. I got the field on the left, We're climbing. Got the field ahead of it now. Climbing. Now I've got enough altitude to return to the field. Every time. And so, as I've said before, every time I take off, I expect the engine to fail at the worst possible time, and I'm pleasantly surprised when it doesn't. And you get to go home every day. Because of that, and because I was really switched on, I was living with I had roommates who were my flight instructor and the tow pilot. So we were just three guys out there having a blast, having so much fun. The word my instructor used, a British guy who came here to get a Jeep and guns, awesome dude. He's a pilot now, is a natural citizen, a great guy named Jeff Larkin. I said to him, look, I want you to push me as hard as you can. I want to get pushed as hard as you can. So we started doing rope breaks and getting lower and lower and lower. Originally, you'd start a rope break around 700-800 feet. That's plenty of altitude. Simulated rope break. You're climbing off, and the guy's not talking about anything. You're just having a conversation. Then in the back, he pulls the release, and poof, there goes the rope. Now what are you going to do there, son? Well, you start to practice your turns back. So you start doing them at 700-800 feet, 1,000 feet or whatever. Plenty of room. And then we started doing the rope breaks at 600. Then we did the rope breaks at 400. Then we were doing rope breaks at 200 feet, and that's about as low as you want to practice. At a 200-foot rope break, you got to do things exactly correct. And the first thing you have to do when that rope breaks, when the power's gone, when you lose power, instantly nose down. Get this plane flying. If you keep the nose up without power, you're going to slow and stall. Nose down. It's instinctive for me. Power out, nose down, bam. All of these things, David, are things that will save your life someday, and if they don't, they'll make you They'll give you the confidence. Even if none of these things ever happen, you'll have confidence that you'd never have. I cannot recommend it highly enough. That question was written for me specifically, almost, I think. So good luck to you, and keep me posted, okay? And by the way, don't worry about the money. You'll find a way to get the money. And even though you say the private pilot's license, you'll have a private pilot's license in a glider. You say it's 6 times more expensive for the power rating. That's probably true, but think about this. You're going to save so much time when you go for your power rating because you're already going to know how to fly. And as I said before, you'll know how to fly better than your flight instructor. He's not going to have to teach you how to fly. He's going to have to teach you how to do certain engine things and radio work and airspace and stuff. You have to know that's the airspace stuff in order to get your glider license. You'll sail through it. You'll be much, much better. Hey, Scott O. Mazansky said, training the reptile. I'm so glad he said that. It's a great close. I've obviously told this story before, but it's the last thing for you to go with here, David. Because of this kind of training and because we really pushed ourselves hard, my flight instructor said 2 things to me that I thought were really, really good. One of them was he said, Bill, you're gonna be okay out there. I'm not worried about you. I said, why is that, Jeff? He said, because your comfort zone is here and your skill set's here. In other words, you start getting nervous and worried before you get into the kind of trouble you can't get out of. The people who get hurt have their skill sets here and their comfort zone is out here. In other words, they're already doing things that they shouldn't be doing before they start to get worried. That was cool. But the other thing he said was, and this is absolutely true, and as I said, I've had 3 times to tell you how true this is. This is exactly what happened during the engine failures. Jeff said to me when I was getting started, I soloed in 7 hours. I was a pretty switched on kid. Jeff said to me, he said, Bill, when things go south up there, the fear and the panic are going to take over, and the reptile's going to take over. That reptile part of your brain is going to take over. If it's a really serious problem, you're going to lose your ability to have rational thought, and the reptile is going to take over. And my job is to teach the reptile what to do. Do I have something on my lip here? I should just... What is that? Shadow? Who knows? I hope it's something delicious. I've never seen it before. Anyway, there you go. So enough of that. But thanks for the great question.